Hi, this is Mark. In this video, I'm going to talk about the two modes of thinking, or two different styles of thinking. It has to do more with introversion and extroversion. So if we take a spectrum, define the neutral zone as like this would be like ambivert. This would be introversion side and extroversion. So generally, most of us reside within a bounded region. So most of us are going to be centered within this region. There's going to be a few outliers here and there. This is based on, from a probabilistic standpoint. In terms of survival, it's better to be centered rather than one extreme or the other. But we do have, and then when it boils down to this, there's a distance. We have a distance, we could just call this x, that is from the center. So I'd say this is x. So this is like the positive direction, and then this is the negative directions. Negative, not that it's a negative, but we're just going to consider it as such. So so now if we take the distance x, so like this is x, so we can consider this is the negative side, this is the positive side, and this is x, the distance, and then the y value is going to be distinction. There's always going to be no, zero or a very high distinction. So as you go in the positive direction, so this is like x, as x goes in the positive direction, as the distance becomes larger, the distinction moves up. It's almost like an exponential relationship. And the reason is, when you get close to the boundaries, when you get close to the boundaries right here, most people reside within this distance. There's not so much distinction, but when you become an outlier, it's quite a distinction, and it's more noticeable generally, and hence why we consider the term outlier. But when it comes to these two styles of thinking, so introversion is a converging process. Introversion is cause to convergence, and then extroversion corresponds to divergence. Now, when it comes to thinking, this is internalization, and this is externalization. Or we can consider this equals internal source, and this equals external. For validation. So for instance, there's tends to be extrovert, for instance. So suppose there's this is like a field of information. So this is a field of info, data, facts. So let's just suppose this is the I. So naturally, this is a case. This is an extrovert case. So naturally, an extrovert will collect data points, and then take a subset convert this into a subset. This is relevancy. It's the filtering process. So this is let's say this is field. This is a subfield, which is a subset of the field. It could be equal, provided that you collect all the information. But then, and then this is validation. So basically, an extrovert goes towards external sources for validation. So they rely on like the scientific study. So this is like scientific, or it's associated with it's associated with factual or statistical knowledge, or generally academia is a good example. Academic environment requires you to go, yield is a wealth, or a wealth of knowledge from external sources, or in order to yield a high grade or high or to move about within the academic world. And essentially, it's an introvert though is a little bit different, because they rely on their own internal world. So like an introvert, so basically, I like to think we all of course gather external information, but the first modality, or the first mode or process for an extrovert, is to seek external validation. So that's the biggest difference. Now, an introvert has basically, if we consider the I, so basically this is like the mental field. Not that it's empty not implying it's empty, but it's a direction. This is basically the initial direction is always going towards external sources, gathering information, and then transmitting the validation back into the mental field. It's relayed back into here. Now, an introvert has a mental field. And so what is generally the case is, of course, everyone has a mental field. So it will start within the mental confines of the mind, and build these internal connections. So these are like internal connections. And then an extrovert will build the connections only from the external validity. So it's a function. So this is a function of external validity. And this is introvert's a function of internal validity. So their internal connections are built, and basically it's mapped. There is a mapping to, of course, this is reality. And basically it's checked for, it's basically, they come up with the internal connection first, and it maps from here to reality, and then that reinforces whether it's valid. So function of internal validity. What makes sense to the user? So what makes sense to the user? And yeah, that's the biggest difference. So this example would be, examples. Scientist, usually. Researchers, not always the case, but usually scientists who use the scientific method is an extrovert type of approach. And then examples here would be like a theorist. So develop analysis. So that's usually a differentiation is to determine whether someone really, this is based on sources, so external source. And this is based on internal source. What makes sense, how they internalize the information to develop or strengthen some type of connection. But it's ultimately all based on, we all observe the reality and we're soaking in information. So everyone has divergence and convergence and so forth. Everyone has extroversion and introversion and different pathways. It's not just applied to thinking. It's also could be different functions. Even intuition and so forth, and feeling. There's introversion, extroversion, and there's a difference there as well. But yeah, this was just to explain the key differences. Everyone is, and just to say that just because you exist at the position, like if you may be positioned in the introversion side of the spectrum, but you can always move over like in time, because it's all relative. So everyone is a mixture, but this is based on these two cases. Cases are based on preference, or predicated by on preference, modality, modus operandi, whatever you prefer. So anyone can go in different direction. It's just what yields the most reward. So it's yields highest reward. Because what we spend our interests on is proportional to the reward feedback. And so therefore, whatever direction you go in any given scenario is based on feedback. If you drink, it gives you feedback. If you go out and you like shopping, that gives you feedback. If you like academics or thinking about new ideas, that is a preference. It's it's a direction, and the direction yields a magnitude. So it's based on direction and magnitude, and that dictates which side of the spectrum we reside on. But yeah, that's all I have right now. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.